Hey, it's Grayson. This is the Fixerpunk podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Grayson Nation, GreysonNation. On TikTok at Fixerpunk, and on Instagram also at Fixerpunk. I've been keeping TikTok relatively updated with good information for you, certain things about current events, and some other great updates there as well. I'm trying to get that count up. It's kind of one of the main ways I try to promote this. This is going to be sort of a Fixing the Fixerpunk episode. I've also been thinking about adding a separate current events series to this to the podcast, separate from Fixing the Fixerpunk and the more periodic, longer lessons. I don't know if I'm going to do that because to get recording time in for me is already a struggle. That's one of the first things, the fun, interesting things I'm going to talk about as far as Fixing the Fixerpunk, which, again, Fixing the Fixerpunk is where you get to look at my life and you get insights into self-help, activism, problem-solving, basically at my expense, from my own mistakes and sometimes from my own victories. So the first thing is, like I said, kind of a fun Fixing the Fixerpunk topic is getting the time to actually do these podcasts and getting a place where I can do them without noise interference. I am right now, it's not working very well, but I tried putting a pillow on the door and in the little gap in the door, and then I tried also putting a pack of paper towels there as well, see if that'll dampen out any noise from the other person that lives here in the house. There's some more professional things you can do, more intricate things you can do to reduce noise, but I haven't even really gotten into those yet. I don't know how much modifying I'm going to want to do / be able to do to reduce the noise on this, because that's oftentimes why I'm not recording, is because sometimes the time when I feel good enough to record is the time when there happens to be noise going on in the place where I live. So go figure. But on the more serious end of this, I did actually have have a callback from the job interview that I spoke about in the last episode with Kelly Slater's company. I had a follow-up. I had a second interview. Think it went fairly well. Trying to see where this all goes. I'm trying to, my goal ultimately is to get this podcast, this show on national radio, get some sort of television exposure as well. And it's been sort of in relation to the action sports end of things, which is kind of what led me down this path. I've been kind of trying to crawl back. I'm reminded of the story from Adam Page's monologue that I mentioned. I believe I mentioned it in the Adam Page episode, where he's talking about coming home, and I'm trying to see what the best way is to do that, and if this position is the right option for that. Who knows what's going to come of it? But ultimately, I'm trying to increase my credibility among people that matter in society, so that I can continue to provide more and more insight to more and more people through this podcast and through other mediums. So that's a very exciting thing that's coming up. In the less exciting category, I actually want to give you a bit of an introduction to the concept that I've mentioned a few times before, be a pitcher, not a thrower, which be a pitcher, not a thrower basically means you don't have to be the fastest, hardest thrower in order to achieve your goals. It comes from baseball. So basically, a pitcher is the person who throws the ball to the batter. So and the goal is so that the batter doesn't hit it. Generally, pitchers throw very, very hard, but you don't necessarily have to throw the hardest. One of my favorite baseball players of all time, Jared Weaver, was known for, at the end of his career, throwing considerably less hard, less fast than other pitchers. You see 95, 96 above 9 mile an hour numbers. He's going to the 86, 88 mile per hour category, which is considerably lower than other Major League Baseball pitchers. but he was still able to, with a level of control and precision, actually do what he needed to do. And if you throw hard, but you don't have that right control, you don't have anything. And if you can't throw hard, though, you can still do very, very targeted things. You don't have to be a hard thrower to be a good baseball pitcher, and you don't have to have that kind of might when you're trying to achieve something in terms of activism, personal advocacy, or many other areas. And that's kind of a key principle of Fixerpunk is be a pitcher, not a thrower. And I have had some personal encounters with that principle recently. So two people in my life, both trying to get legislators to help with different situations in their lives. They're completely different situations. It's not important what they are. But one of them has kind of decided to go in the approach of just spewing out and putting tons and tons of energy, putting tons and tons of force and energy into and really might, I think might is probably better. We're putting more of their might because it's difficult sometimes to try to do things this way. But writing pages upon pages upon pages, tens and tens of pages of a letter to a single legislator, taking up months and months and months and months of time to get everything perfectly right, even as difficult as this has been for this person. And the responses have been underwhelming, and her response has been just to kind of keep going back with the same story over again, trying to get attention to the same legislator. That's a lot of difficult stuff. That's a lot of, as we, in our baseball analogy, that's a lot of hard throwing, but it's not landing correctly. It's not landing as a strike. It's not landing in the way that you want to, even though you're putting all this force. You're mustering all this force and this energy toward this objective, but you're not doing it in a good way. And especially in case where you have limited time, limited energy, you have to know how to leverage that in the most appropriate way. And this is just not working. It's not the right strategy whatsoever. But oftentimes what I see is that people get very emotionally invested in a particular strategy because they think that it specifically rights the wrong in the way that they want the wrong to be righted. A lot of times there's a little bit of a trauma response to some of these things. The person who went through this situation had a very, very long and arduous ordeal, and they feel the need to write 50 whatever pages to a legislator about it. But in reality, you really only want to have like 1 or 2 pages when you're writing to a legislator. Now, especially at the federal level, this is to a senator. Then there's another state level one that she wants to write another extremely long, extremely detailed letter to, because you want to even know that these people are interested in what it is you have to say and interested in helping you. And as a result of sort of spending all this time on that, on doing these particular things, trying to do this, the advocacy in this way, there are other ways that were being neglected. So this is sort of a matter of actually prioritizing. This is kind of an application of be a pitcher, not thrower. Not necessarily the only application of be a pitcher, not thrower, but prioritizing is one of the ways of that you can actually use this, because it is an energy conservation principle. Basically, it's a principle of preserving limited energy and using it in the best way possible, and not necessarily the most showy, the most flashy, the most dramatic way possible, but doing what's going to get you the win that you need. Here, I could tell that there were other avenues. I could immediately tell, speaking to this person, there were other avenues, other things that needed to be done that weren't getting done because this was the approach that she wanted to take. And it wasn't even really fruitful. So that is, and sometimes there are even cases where you see a major thing that, because you're pursuing one aspect of a problem, and doesn't even have to deal with specifically with advocacy, but anytime you have a complex multifactorial problem, and I've had this happen in my own life, especially with this accident I had a few years ago, there are other things, and sometimes these things are literally distractions. Sometimes these things are kind of even social constructs. They're things that you believe need to be done, and things that you believe you have to get in order to get to the next step. And they really aren't necessary at all, but you wind up putting all of your time and all of your energy into them instead of doing what is effective. And even you miss out on critical things that can even feed into your own personal life and being able to take care of yourself. There are people that like pour themselves out to help somebody else, and they're not helping themselves enough. They're not taking care of themselves enough because what they're doing is in fact inefficient. And the best thing they could have done in terms of advocacy is to get what they need for now and for the future, and planning for these kinds of things in advance. That could have been the best strategy overall. And I just see this too many times. But you have to look at how to prioritize things. And first thing you want to make sure is that your own life is basically secure enough, and secure enough for you. Really, it's what you want. How you want to live your life. If you want to be like Darby Allin, one of the pro wrestlers I was talking about in a prior episode, who decided to live in his car for some time because he wanted to put all of his time, his energy into wrestling. That's the level of security that he wanted for himself. He decided to choose that. He made a deliberate, conscientious choice. If you want to make that choice, that's fine to make that choice. But you want to put yourself in a situation where you're taken care of. And even if it's in your own personal life, even if the thing you're advocating for is something that's hurt you in your personal life, if what you're going to do now is it's going to take away your time from doing what you need in order to maintain your preferred level of security in the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. If you're not taking care of that, then you need to take care of that. And then the next thing is, of course, deadlines. There are various things. There are various areas where there's a deadline. Anytime anything involving the law is in question, there are deadlines called statutes of limitations, and statutes of limitations really are very, very important, and they can really destroy you. And sometimes they can be a lot shorter than what you think. So if you even think that there's going to be anything that involves litigation, a lawsuit, something like that, you have to be exceedingly careful not to miss those types of deadlines. And you want to make sure you've pursued everything. You want to make sure you've thoroughly gotten through those things that have deadlines attached to them. And then you can get on to sort of doing things that don't necessarily have deadlines on them, that are more about gaining awareness, things like writing to legislators. There is a certain type, like the second person that I know that has reached out to a legislator recently has gotten constituent assistance from that legislator. And the thing about constituent assistance is you have to go to the right person. So state level agency, go with somebody at state level. Federal level, go with somebody federal level. State level, that's like here in California, that's state assembly member, state senate. Federal level, that's House of Representatives or Senate. And you have to talk to the right person and know how they're going to be able to help. That's kind of timing the location, getting the location right on the pitch, and not just the velocity to it, is making sure it's going to the right place, that's the right time, efficiently. Just if you're going to write something, maybe 1 or 2 pages, maybe making a phone call where you sound relatable, telling them who you are, that you're a constituent in their district. And this can help with, like, this strategy I just spoke about, constituent assistance, is basically if you're having trouble dealing with a federal or state agency, you can speak to your federal or state legislators, and they can sometimes contact people in that particular agency to help you with this. And the request in the 50-page letter case was it seemed non-specific, even kind of cloudy to me. In the 1-page letter case, It was very clear, very specific, had a good universal theme, but then also went in and said, okay, this is what I want you to do. I want you to talk to this agency and look at this problem that's causing these delays in the processing of this paperwork. And that's easier to do with a shorter piece of information. So you want to be mindful of all of those things, and you don't want to spend too much time like going after things that you really, really don't need. And you do need a level of bravery and a level of confidence to do this, because sometimes doing the very thing, it's the very thing you're afraid of that you actually have to do. That's been something that I've had to kind of confront in my own life, in my own situation. And you have to realize that there are a lot of barriers. Sometimes those barriers are there for a reason, and that reason is to stop people like you from thinking that you can do that, even if you can, and you're perfectly in your right to do such a thing. So I really want to rant on this whole area of prioritization, because it's something I've gotten wrong a lot. What you want to look at is, in terms of problems, you want to look at whatever is causing you to be unable to take your next steps. If you look out into the future, visualize it, and what is stopping you from doing what you want to do in terms of your own personal life, in terms of your advocacy. Those are the things that you need to get through first. And then you have, of course, the goals, the people in the community around you, the things you want to do to impact other people. These are more personal advocacy. This is kind of where policy meets personal life, that it's your own personal life. These two people's personal lives were affected by government policy in one way or another, and handled it in different ways. So in that particular case, that's how you look at these things, and you see, okay, at this stage, I'm gonna need to do this sort of advocacy work for myself in terms of talking to legislators, in terms of filing a lawsuit. I'm going to go back to my case where I was injured. I'm going to have to talk to this many attorneys, and set concrete goals for yourself, and have a clear roadmap of how you're going to do things, and know that it's reasonable, and get the information you need in that regard, so that you know where you are actually going, as opposed to just throwing things all over the place and hoping they stick. With that in mind, when you're talking about like doing like more macro stuff, like trying to talk about an issue that maybe you're not affected by, but you see other people are affected by in the world, there's a different application of be a pitcher, not thrower, that I won't get into, because it's outside of sort of the scope of Fixing the Fixerpunk. Fixing the Fixerpunk's more about personal stuff, more about my own life. In terms of that stuff, there's very specific rhetorical application of it in terms of how you say your rhetoric, how you speak to people, how you time things, and to get people to agree with your ideas. So that's the other. Actually, I think that's sort of like the original application of be a pitcher, not a thrower. But that'll probably be in a whole separate episode. I really have to do a whole episode that's just on be a pitcher, not a thrower. But here, going back to some of my own personal stuff, after that big rant, I have realized that there are some random things that are getting in the way of my path in my own personal life. One of them, of course, is, I told you, acoustics, this room, getting these episodes recorded. The other is kind of funny. Person that lives with me gets upset with me all the time because somehow this one like specific area of my hair for some reason seems too greasy to her. And it's constant discussion about this one thing, and it kind of drives me nuts, because it's like, I know everything else is perfect, but apparently this one small area, I guess because I reach over my head in the wrong way to get to shampoo it or something, but this one small area of my hair, it's like this just feels like such a dead end issue, but she likes to make it such a big issue. And it kind of annoys me, and it kind of puts a damper a little bit on my confidence, especially if I'm going to do videos. I don't think it's visible. I don't think any of this stuff's visible. I've posted random pictures of myself on the internet, asked people if I looked like my hair was greasy. They said no. Probably how it would show up on the camera when I do videos. But it's still been kind of a sticking point. And that sends me into different things. So you have to learn in a way to sort of shut that out. Even me being able to like just record and speak freely, I'm kind of just not caring too much about what other people think about me and what I say, just by doing this. And that's again another lesson that I've been trying to teach myself, and trying to become more independent in that regard. Not depend as much on people's opinions, but also I want to have the right people around me. And that's definitely a bit of a challenge. This job that I'm considering, or that they're considering me for, really, to be clear, I've not been offered said job that I spoke about earlier on the episode. I haven't been offered it yet. I just interviewed a second time for it. But I'm not sure if that's going to help me get in touch with more and more people that are like-minded and like the kind of stuff that I do. You have to not necessarily be bound to that, especially if somebody's making you scared. This is something I keep looking at throughout my life. I keep looking back and seeing this was a time where people freaked me out for no reason, and I made a bad decision because of it. I've had like all kinds of people that have purported to be experts in their fields, and they led me wrong, and they discounted my opinion. Again, going back to that sort of looking at your path. If you see that there's still some sort of obstacle in the path, you see a boulder in your path, just because somebody says the boulder does not exist, does not make it magically not exist. You have to know, okay, this is what I have to do about it. Does it exist? Take a step back. Is this really an obstacle? Am I being given a solution to solve that obstacle? Can I solve for X with what I am being told here? Or is this person just kind of dismissing me and saying, hey, look, that's not real? Even though it is very real to you, and you have to really learn to trust your instincts on this stuff, because of course you don't want to be hanging your head about something you don't need to be upset about, or that isn't really a concern, that's just worry. But you don't want worry to cause you, or doubt to cause you to not solve a problem and take it on and fix it the way that you need to actually fix it. And I even thinking back to the accident that I had, this accident was back in like 2016. There were lots of people who were giving me tons of bad advice. And I went with their bad advice, and I shut my mouth more than I should have. And that's a big, big regret for me. So you have to learn, even if somebody's claiming to help you, and especially if somebody's claiming to help you and care about you, there's a bit of a power dynamic, even unconsciously. And that power dynamic, you have to learn how to get around it and work in the way that you want it to be, and not, especially if it's something where you're internalizing it on, okay, this is all my fault. Okay, well, that doesn't matter too much, even if it is. And oftentimes that's just a construct. But the thing you have to know is, where is this advice taking me? Where is this idea of this problem is not real taking me? What is my path going to look like after that? And go from there. And in my own situation, I'm realizing, okay, if I just ignore things, I'm not going to get better. But there are some things I kind of need to ignore and stop chasing after. Things that I don't need to chase after to get to my goal. And those are some things I'm trying to kind of solidify. I'm working through it. What exactly is it that I need to do? Where do I need to be in terms of my own performance? Where do I need to be in terms of my economics? Where do I need to be in terms of my social situation to get people to listen to me and to grow my influence? What is it that I need there? And my ability to nail this down kind of waxes and wanes from moment to moment. And the ideas kind of, in the whole creative process of it all, kind of go back and forth quite a bit. So these episodes aren't meant to be pretty. Sometimes they're just random information that I'm putting out there. Hopefully you found something of value of it. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're not already subscribed on whatever platform you're listening on. Follow at Grayson Nation, GREYSONNATION on Twitter. Follow at Fixerpunk on Instagram and TikTok as well. And I'll see you back next time for the Fixerpunk podcast.